So back in October of 2025, something big happened. One of Uruguay's most important state banks, Banco Hipotecario, it just went dark. Now, the official story they told everyone was all about caution and control. But as we're going to see, the digital evidence, the forensics, well, that tells a completely different story. And it's a story of a massive data heist and a very calculated cover-up.
All right, so first, let's just walk through the story that the public was told. I mean, when a major bank goes offline, how you communicate that is everything. And the story the bank chose was very, very carefully designed to stop any panic and make it seem like they had it all under control.
And this was the headline, right? This was the cornerstone of their whole message. A proactive, responsible shutdown. The bank was telling everybody, hey, we pulled the plug ourselves to keep your information safe. And you know, it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A little bit of an inconvenience, sure, but it's all to protect you.
And that's where the whole official story just starts to fall apart. Because think about it. If you're locking the doors to protect what's inside, you better be absolutely sure the bad guys haven't already walked out with all the valuables.
The term they kept using was incidente informatico, a technical incident. It sounds so harmless, you know? It's a generic, non-threatening phrase. So the whole public conversation became about the annoying service outages and, oh, look at the heroes working to get the systems back online. It completely dodged the much, much scarier question of data security.
Okay, so that was the official story. Now let's peel that back and look at what the digital forensics actually found. This is where the story shifts from a simple little power outage to a major international cybercrime. And when you put these two stories side by side, it's night and day. That technical incident? Yeah, that was actually a really sophisticated double-extortion ransomware attack. The proactive shutdown? Turns out it was a totally reactive panic move after the data was already gone. And all that focus on getting services back online? Well, that was just a huge distraction from the real crisis here, a total catastrophic failure of confidentiality.
And this is the real scale of that failure. We are talking about 700 gigabytes of data stolen, gone from the bank's servers.
Because let's be real, 700 gigabytes isn't just a number on a screen. No way. It's the most sensitive, personal, and financial information you can imagine for thousands and thousands of people. We're talking about their identities, their entire financial histories, their lives, all of it, now in the hands of criminals.
So what exactly is this thing that happened? The attackers used a tactic called double extortion, and it's as brutal as it sounds. It's like a 1-2 punch. First, they sneak in and quietly steal all your most valuable data. Then, and only after they have your data safely copied, they drop the hammer. They lock down your entire network with ransomware and demand 2 payments. One to unlock your systems, and another, much bigger one, to stop them from leaking all your stolen data to the entire world.
Now, the timeline here is absolutely critical. The forensic report shows that the data theft, the actual heist, happened back in late September. That was days, maybe even weeks, before the public shutdown in October. The attackers, this group called Crypto24, they were already inside the network, just quietly vacuuming up that 700 gigs of data. The network paralysis in October, that wasn't the start of the attack. That was just the noisy explosion they set off after the real crime was already done.
And these guys were not amateurs. I mean, look at this. They used custom-built tools to basically blind the bank's own security software. They moved around inside the network using the bank's legitimate admin tools, so they just looked like normal IT activity. They even deployed special programs just to uninstall security protections. And the data theft itself? They disguised all 700 gigabytes as harmless Google Drive uploads. It was so clever. A brilliant way to sneak a massive amount of data out the front door without anyone noticing. This wasn't just a breach, it was a complete dismantling of the bank's defenses.
So, this brings us to the real heart of the issue. The data's gone, the network is completely locked down. The bank had a choice to make: come clean or stay quiet. They chose silence.
The forensic report actually gives this a name. They call it the Protocolo del Silencio, the Protocol of Silence. And that name is just perfect. Because this wasn't an accident or some kind of miscommunication. No, this was a deliberate, calculated strategy to pretend a catastrophic data breach was just some small, routine problem, all to avoid the consequences of the truth.
So you have to ask why? I mean, why go to all this trouble to hide something so huge? Well, the reasons were pretty powerful. If they admitted that 700 gigabytes of customer data was stolen, it would have immediately triggered data privacy laws that require them to tell everyone.
It would have opened them up to huge, massive fines from regulators. It would have exposed years of security neglect. And of course, it would have absolutely destroyed public trust and scared off investors. In fact, you can see here they weren't just bending the rules, they were breaking them. There are critical banking regulations in place for exactly this kind of scenario. Confidentiality? Failed, obviously. 700 gigs gone. Business continuity? The bank was paralyzed for days. Failed. Backups? The fact that it took so long to recover suggests their backup systems weren't even close to what was required. So they didn't just fail their customers, they failed to meet their most basic legal duties.
And what makes this even worse, this wasn't a one-off thing. Another state organization, SABAL, was hit at the exact same time. Now, that points to a much bigger, much scarier problem, a potential systemic weakness across all of Uruguay's most important institutions. So the silence at the bank didn't just cover up one failure. It was hiding a vulnerability that could still be putting other critical systems at risk right now.
So what does all of this mean for the actual people whose data was stolen? Well, this decision to stay silent, it creates two very, very different possible futures. And believe me, the stakes could not be higher.
Let's start with the worst-case scenario. This is the path we're on right now, as long as this protocol of silence continues.
Okay, just imagine if that 700 gigabytes of data gets dumped on the dark web. The result would be a tidal wave of identity theft and financial fraud. And because nobody was ever officially warned, citizens are totally unprepared for it. Even worse, the cost of cleaning up this mess, it's probably going to get passed down to customers through higher bank fees. And if a state-owned bank can just ignore data protection laws with zero consequences, well, those laws become totally meaningless for everybody. And that would seriously damage Uruguay's reputation on the world stage.
But it doesn't have to go that way. There is another path, a much better one that starts with transparency and accountability.
If the breach is actually acknowledged, everything changes, and for the better. First, citizens get warned immediately, which lets them take steps to protect themselves and their identities. Then regulators can actually step in and enforce the law, which sends a really powerful message to every other bank that this is not okay. This would pretty much force a national security upgrade across all critical infrastructure and make sure that a multi-day financial shutdown like this can never, ever happen again.
Look, the forensic report is crystal clear on this. The choice between these two futures really depends on what happens next, and it lays out a direct path away from this crisis and towards a much more secure future for everyone.
The recommendations really boil down to three essential steps. First, transparency, and I mean right now. End the protocol of silence and tell the public the truth about the data theft. Second, regulatory enforcement. The laws have to be applied to prove that they actually mean something. And third, strategic investment. We have to mandate modern security across all of these critical state institutions to stop these kinds of attacks before they can even start. It's a clear, actionable plan. It just needs to happen.
You know, this whole incident leaves us with one really critical question. The hackers, what they did was malicious, it was criminal, we expect that from them. But the response from the institution, the choice to hide the truth from the very people they're supposed to protect, that might have created a far greater and much more lasting danger. It really forces us to ask, what causes the most harm in the end? The initial attack itself, or the silence that lets all that damage fester and multiply?